Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be taking a look at Bleacher Report's most underrated NBA players right now, and also they have an overrated one, so we're going to be taking a look at that one after. As you can see on the cover, it's Ayo Dosunmu, so I'm assuming he's on this list. And I want to see if I agree with them. Obviously it is still the NBA offseason, so it is a little bit hard to try to get some NBA content, but I thought this was a good idea of taking a look at some underrated players, overrated players, seeing how I agree with it. Do I not? But let's get started. Number 1, or technically number 5. I think they're doing this in an order of like most underrated to least. So like this is the 5th most underrated player in the league, they say. Which I have to see the names above it. But I do think he is definitely someone that has became someone that only, people that really, really watch basketball, true, basketball fans are going to know Santi Aldama. But if you're like a casual, turn on the NBA every once in a while type of guy, you're not going to really know who this guy is. And they literally say that here. He is nowhere near a household name. The only reason I could see where this doesn't make sense is, I think he's underrated and no one really knows about him, but I don't think he's good enough to be someone that you really call like an underrated player. I think he provides, some good depth for a team, but I don't know if he's someone that has like a true, really, really, really good impact on this team. Like this year for the Grizzlies, he played a lot, obviously, because of injuries, and he looked obviously really good. He had really good stats because of it. But I don't know how much you actually will end up playing when they have a fully healthy team. So that's the only thing that I maybe don't agree with him being an underrated player. I think he's underrated. But, there's probably, I think, someone in the league that is at least a little bit more underrated than Santi Aldama to put him in, a top 5 most underrated players in the league. So I don't know if I agree with it or not. I think he is underrated, but like I said, I think you can find a replacement that makes more sense. And they have a whole write-up thing. We're not going to really go over that. Number 4, Simone Fontecchio. Now this one is one that you definitely, I think, have to watch him a lot more to really see it. Again, I have to see who's above him on the list. But I do think that he is definitely someone that is underrated, especially with him playing on 2 teams this year, or his technically rookie year. Playing with the Jazz and the Pistons. So it's 2 teams that nobody cares about too much. And I think that's a big reason why a lot of people might not know about Simone Fontecchio. If you read some of these statistics, when he was on the Pistons, he averaged 15 points per game across 16 games, knocking down 53.9% of his twos and 42.6% of his threes. I was definitely also even thinking that, hey, maybe even NBA teams think that he's, underrated. Or I think he's underrated by NBA teams. Like, the contract he got from the Pistons, his extension this offseason was, I think, relatively cheap for him, as I think that he will play way better than that contract. And I do really like Simone Fontecchio. I need to see who's above him on this list to see who's more underrated. But I do think he is more underrated than Santi Aldama, though. Like I said, Santi Aldama, he might not get that many minutes next year for the Grizzlies. On the other hand, with Simone Fontecchio, I think he definitely will actually continue to actually play some minutes. I think this, 15.4 points per game and these percentages, maybe they go down a little bit. Maybe he doesn't average 15 points. But I still think that he definitely will provide just as much impact as he did last year on this Pistons team that hopefully is starting to maybe find a way out of a rebuild. Hopefully, they got a whole bunch of additions this offseason, so we'll see. But let's go to number 3. Number 3, they have Naji Marshall. And I think Naji Marshall is definitely underrated. Do I think he's more underrated than Simone Fontecchio is the question. I think another guy that, you have to watch a lot more to really see if he's underrated or not. Because these are all role players, I'm assuming. All this is going to be role players. And so, if you're someone, like I said, who watches casually, you might not know some of these role players or how much impact they really have unless you're watching, every game or close to every game. But yeah, obviously he provides, shooting, defense. I think he's a little bit not undersized, but like I don't know. I'm used to seeing him sometimes play even the 4, and I feel like for the 4 he's a little bit undersized. For the 3, I think he's perfect. Obviously, um, but yeah, I think he's really underrated too. He provides good shooting, defense. Um, but I think the only difference between him and Simone Fontecchio is I feel like Fontecchio has the ability, I think, to be more of, I wouldn't say a main option because I wouldn't want him as my main option either, but like I think he has more scoring ability with him. Naji Marshall is more of a defender. That's more of what you're looking when you get Naji Marshall. But I think that Naji Marshall now playing for the Mavericks, not that he played for a team that was bad or that no one watched, but like the Pelicans, I think nowhere near Dallas in terms of the media and how he's seen as by the league. And if Dallas goes on a deep run again with Najee Marshall, I think people are going to start realizing that he is an underrated player. He provides a lot for the team. That's why he got the contract he did. They signed him to like a 3-year, $27 million deal contract. So he got paid a decent amount, and for good reasons. Number 2, they have Ayo Dosunmu. So I wonder who they have at number 1 because, since they're all role players, I think Ayo probably is the most underrated role player. Last year playing for the Bulls, team that was obviously not that good. So a lot of people that aren't, Bulls fans or someone who like just watches all teams aside from, just their few favorite teams, this is someone that definitely, if you watch the Bulls on some nights, he does look like the best player, sometimes the second best player, and that's when they had DeRozan. Even with Zach LaVine who on the court, like when they have a lot of people on the court, like all their players last year, you could still look at the court sometimes and see, he sometimes looks like the best or the second best player. But yeah, him and Kobe White, I think both had really, really good years last year. His shooting improved a lot, and as the season got, later on, later on in the season, he got even better. And I wonder what's going to happen this year because I already made a video of, players I think will have the biggest jump for each team next season. I didn't say Ayo for the Bulls because I'm not too sure if he will take another jump or not, but I think that he still is someone that he still has, I think, some growth in him, and I think there's definitely a chance that he could become a really, really good player. I mean, he already is a really good player, but, like, even better, like, borderline all-star maybe even. Who knows? I mean, I think that's just his potential. Obviously, I'm not saying he's going to be an all-star, but I think he has that potential for the Bulls. And it also made me think, with Ayo Dosunmu, being someone that got drafted relatively late because he was older in college, I feel like some of these guys that go later because of being juniors, it sometimes is interesting to me because a lot of them, they're juniors and seniors and they're a little bit older. A lot of them get drafted kind of late, and it's a little bit confusing with some of them. Like, I could understand the play style for, like, some of the centers that are, seniors. But, like, literally this year, another guy also who went to Illinois, Ayo Dosunmu, obviously he went to Illinois from Chicago. He got drafted as, I think, a junior or a senior, and he fell really late because of it. And then this year, similar in terms of, I think, play style, Terrence Shannon, who also went to Illinois, got drafted relatively late because he was an older player. Is my assumption is why he got drafted relatively late. And in summer league, Terrence Shannon looked really, really good. Obviously, don't know how he's gonna look at the NBA level, like once he's playing against actual NBA players. But overall, like some of these guards, I think that provide defense. Also, like it is surprising how some of the like 3-and-D older guys somehow find ways to fall in the draft. Because then they end up looking really, really good. So I don't know. It is always interesting to me. But yeah, Ayo Dosunmu, I think he is the most underrated. And then there's Aaron Wiggins. So maybe, I don't know who I have as more underrated. I would say Ayo Dosunmu. But Aaron Wiggins, I think, maybe I could understand the case for it because he plays for a lot better of a team, and I think he provides a really, really similar impact. But yeah, Aaron Wiggins is someone that also that not many people know, aside from people that really, really watch the NBA. But more of an NBA casual is gonna be like, who is Aaron Wiggins? But Aaron Wiggins definitely, I think, is a big part of why the Oklahoma City Thunder had such a good season last year, and will continue to be good, which is why he got that extension of I think it was 3 years, 30 something million. I think 37. I think it was. I don't know, but yeah, and he's still also really young, just like Ayo Dosunmu. I mean, this guy has not played that many minutes in the league. I remember when he first got kind of called out of the G League onto the Oklahoma City Thunder, and he played basically good, I think, in every game he's played with the team. Well, not every game, but he's been good since the start on this team, and he's been getting better year by year. And kind of like they say right here, removing Josh Giddey from rotation could open up some additional run next season. So yeah, I would like to see Aaron Wiggins maybe get a little bit of an increased role off the bench, and I think that would be really nice for him to keep seeing some development out of him, and some growth. But yeah, overall, I think he could be the most underrated. I still have Ayo Dosunmu, but those are the most underrated players in the league. I'm assuming the overrated also is going to be somewhat role player-ish guys, because that's what this is. It's kind of all role players. But yeah, we're going to go to the most overrated now and see how that is. All right, here we are with the most overrated players now. And just based off the cover, I don't know how I feel about Jonathan Kuminga being on this, assuming at least that he is on this list. That is definitely interesting. But let's get into it. Number 5, they have Jonathan Isaac. So I feel like this is an odd one, I think, to kind of point out as an overrated player. Just because I feel like Jonathan Isaac, I think, is properly rated. Maybe that's just me, but I think he's properly rated. No one thinks he's that crazy. The only thing I would say he's overrated in is 2K. Sometimes this guy does end up winning DPOY in 2K 5 years in a row, or at least that was before Wemby got in the game in my league. But I don't think he's overrated. I think they say the case is per minute impact goes only so far when the minutes don't add up. I don't know what that even is supposed to mean. Just don't expect him to do it for more than 15, 20 minutes a game. So they basically saying that he's pretty good. He just can't do it for more than 15 to 20 minutes. I guess it's more so based off his contract, because I think maybe he's overpaid, but I wouldn't say overrated, which happens a lot with players. Sometimes they're overpaid but not overrated. It's just how the league is. Sometimes if you want to retain one of your players, you're going to have to overpay for them. But I think he's definitely properly rated. I don't think many people think of Jonathan Isaac and think he's some insane, talent. I think people kind of understand what Jonathan Isaac is. He's a good defender, but he's not going to, be someone that's more than just a really good defender. And on some nights he might look pretty good offensively. But that's what everyone, I think, already thinks of Jonathan Isaac. So I don't know how much I agree with this. Next we have Jamal Murray. It says his nutshell case where would he be without Nikola Jokic? They say he's a damn good basketball player, fringe all-star. He has some ridiculous playoff games under his belt, including a handful of epically clutch shots. Honestly, I guess I can get behind this. Me being someone who likes the Lakers, I can't really say he's overrated, because in the playoffs he does kill us. Okay, I can't lie. He does not like the Lakers. He has good playoff games. But in terms of, I guess, overrating, him, I could understand it. Just because, aside from, if he never had these playoff games that he does have against teams, then he would obviously, I think, not be known as much or thought of as much as a top player in the league at his position. But yeah, I think if I had to choose overrated players in the league, I could understand Jamal Murray being on this list. Just because in the regular season he's not the same player he is in the playoffs, which isn't a bad thing at the same time. I mean, if he's performing in the playoffs, that's really all that matters. But yeah, there's definitely games in the regular season where he is not looking nearly at the level he is in the playoffs, and he's sometimes inconsistent in the regular season. So I could, I guess, understand it if I had to choose like overrated players in the league. But I wouldn't, yeah, like just come out and say Jamal Murray's overrated. But I could understand it. He does have 0 All-Star appearances. That is still interesting to me because I don't know, like it just seems like he's been an All-Star, but he's not. It's just really hard to make All-Star as a guard in the NBA now, especially if you're in the West. But yeah, so I don't know. I mean, maybe I guess I would say he's overrated a little bit. So maybe I could understand being on the list. Number 3, they have Miles Bridges. They say, how much value does he provide to a winning team? I mean, they do have it as a question. I don't know. I mean, that is kind of the question of, I think that really determines if he is overrated or not. I mean, he's looked pretty decent on the Charlotte Hornets. The problem is they don't win games. And he's going to keep playing for the Hornets. Obviously, he signed back with the Hornets this offseason. So I don't know. I think we're going to have to find that out if either the Hornets get better or he eventually leaves. But I think he's still obviously really good. I do want to see what he would look like on a winning team. Because I could understand maybe where they're coming from of if you put him on a team like the 76ers or put him on the Warriors or put him on some of these other NBA teams that would like to add, a wing. Would he look like a really, really good above average role player? Would he look like a star player? Would he look like a just good off the bench guy? Like what would his stats look like? What would he look like impact wise on a team that is really, really good? So I could understand this one slightly. Actually, not slightly. I could really understand this one. But I think he still is really good. So, like, I don't know. I wouldn't say he's overrated. I think a lot of these guys you can't really say are overrated. But I can understand what they mean by this, and I think it is a good question to ask because I actually think of the same question now that they say it. Number 4 or 2, I should say. Jaylen Green. I'm completely behind this. Out of all these, this is the one that I'm completely behind for most overrated. And I think it's possibly because of his draft position, but they say the season begins before the All-Star break. And yeah, I mean, I feel like every year with Jaylen Green, he's terrible the first half of the season. And then, I mean, after every All-Star break, he's looked better. Obviously, after his rookie year, you're like, okay, he's better after the All-Star break. It's just some early struggles for a young guard in the league, and it just continued to happen every season. He's just not good in the first half of the season, and then he looks a lot better in the second half. Now, just based off what I hear out of like Rockets fans and people who think Jaylen Green's going to be something special in the league, stuff like that, obviously, he could still definitely be that, but a lot of his games where he is a high scorer, and this is not to discredit him, but like it does obviously make sense a little bit. A lot of his top scoring games is usually when a lot of people on the team are injured, and he's chucking up a lot of shots. His shooting percentages still usually aren't that insane on the nights that he has like 40-point games and stuff like that. He just happens to be throwing up a lot of shots. I mean, literally last season, I forgot what game it was, but there was a game where, like, I'm pretty sure the Rockets had a good amount of guys out with injury, and it was, like, literally him throwing up shots at the rim. He had, like, 20-something shots in the first half, I thought, and he had, obviously, a good amount of points, but, like, it was also helping them win. Like, they were still winning games, so, like, that's why I wouldn't say you can discredit it. But I wouldn't say his percentages look too good for even the games that he does have high scoring numbers. I would say he is overrated at this point. I feel like there's a lot of people that do talk about Jaylen Green as someone that could be a future MVP, which he could. There's still, I think, a chance. Like, he has the bag. Like, he has the bag to do so. But do I think so? No, not at all. I don't think that he could ever be that crazy. So that's why I could definitely agree with him being as probably the most overrated, because I'm assuming, yep, number one is Kuminga from the cover. And I don't know how much I really understand this one. Let's see. They say we still need more at both ends of the floor for longer. So the only reason I could understand why they're saying he's really overrated is because Jonathan Kuminga, kind of before this season, barely really even played minutes. And then he kind of, had that whole thing where he requested a trade because he wanted to play more and stuff like that. And then you saw him playing a lot more for the Warriors, and he looked amazing. So because of that, the Warriors obviously now have him as kind of like their top asset, and probably don't want to trade him because he has a lot of value. So I wouldn't understand why they really say that he is overrated. Yeah, he only kind of put that together for one season, but it is the first season he's played. He was a former, high pick in the draft, 7th pick in the draft. So obviously I think the potential is there. The skill is there. And I think he's still going to keep growing. I think he's definitely going to keep getting better. So I wouldn't say he's overrated at all. The only thing I can maybe understand that you could even give a case for is like maybe his trade value is too high. But I think it's an understandable trade value for a franchise where they're relatively really old, and their best young guy and potentially even second best player on the team next season behind Curry is a young player with a lot of potential. And like I said, he could be the second best player on a team that they're still trying to win now. I think he has a good trade value for what he obviously is. Now, last time there was a Warriors player that was, highly valued and young, we see what they're doing right now in Washington. But I think it's a different case with Jonathan Kuminga. But yeah, so I wouldn't agree with that. Overall, the only one I really kind of agree with here is Jaylen Green. And then for the underrated one, I agree with a lot of those ones. That they're underrated players. I wouldn't say some of them maybe are top 5 underrated players. I would have to kind of look through myself. But yeah, y'all let me know your thoughts. Do you agree with some of the underrated ones? Do you agree with some of the overrated ones? Or give me one of the people that you think is underrated or overrated. And yeah, that's really it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next one.